Echoes of the Unknown.
Chapter 1. The Inheritance. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days when I finally got the keys to my grandmother's antique shop. October in Istanbul can be moody, but that year, 2019, it felt like the city itself was in mourning. The narrow cobblestone streets of Galata were slick with water, and the fog rolling in from the Bosphorus made everything look like an old photograph, slightly blurred, slightly unreal. My mother's voice crackled through my phone as I stood outside the shop at 14 Serdari Ekrem Street. The building was wedged between a trendy coffee shop and a tourist trap restaurant, looking decidedly out of place with its peeling Ottoman-era facade and dusty windows. We've been through this, I said, juggling my umbrella while trying to fit the ancient key into the lock. Someone needs to sort through Baba An's things. The landlord's been patient, but we can't keep paying rent on a closed shop. My grandmother, Aisha Demir, had passed away 6 months earlier at the age of 89. She'd run Demir Antiques for over 50 years, and in all that time she'd never once invited family to visit the shop. Even as a child, when I'd beg to see the treasures she talked about at dinner, she'd pat my head and say, "Some places aren't meant for children, kuchum." The lock finally gave way with a rusty groan. The door swung inward and I was hit by the smell of dust, old wood, and something else, something floral and cloying like funeral flowers left too long in a vase. "I'll call you later, Anne," I said, ending the call before she could protest further. The shop was smaller than I'd imagined, but every surface was crammed with artifacts from the Ottoman Empire and beyond. Brass coffee sets lined the shelves, their surfaces green with patina. Kilim rugs hung from the walls, their patterns faded but still intricate. And mirrors, so many mirrors. They covered nearly every wall, reflecting the dim light from the street into infinity. I flipped the light switch, but nothing happened. Of course, the electricity had probably been cut months ago. Using my phone's flashlight, I navigated deeper into the shop, my footsteps muffled by layers of Turkish carpets. That's when I saw it. In the back corner, covered by a heavy black cloth, stood a mirror that dwarfed all the others. Even through the fabric, I could see its outline. Easily 2 meters tall, with what looked like an ornate frame. Unlike everything else in the shop, this corner was spotlessly clean, as if someone had been caring for this particular item until very recently. I reached for the cloth, then hesitated. Something about the mirror's placement, the careful way it had been covered, made me uneasy. But I was here to catalog and sell, not to indulge in superstition. The cloth fell away like water, revealing the most beautiful mirror I'd ever seen. The frame was carved rosewood, inlaid with mother-of-pearl in a pattern of roses and nightingales. The glass itself was pristine, without a single age spot or crack, reflecting my surprised face with perfect clarity. But there was something wrong with the reflection. It took me a moment to realize what bothered me. The mirror showed me, yes, but the background was different. Instead of the cluttered antique shop, I saw an elegant room with silk wallpaper and gas lamps. I spun around, heart racing, but saw only the familiar chaos of grandmother's collection. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was normal again. Just the dusty shop, just me looking pale and startled in the dim light. "Trick of the light," I muttered, but my voice sounded thin in the empty shop. I spent the next 3 hours cataloging items, studiously avoiding the corner with the large mirror. But I felt its presence like a weight in the room, and more than once I caught myself glancing at it, expecting what, I didn't know. By the time I locked up, the rain had turned into a proper storm. I hurried through the streets, eager to get home to my modern apartment with its electric lights and complete absence of antique mirrors. But even as I made dinner and watched Netflix trying to return to normalcy, I couldn't shake the image of that strange reflection. That night, I dreamed of roses and nightingales, and a woman in a white dress crying behind glass. Chapter 2. The First Contact. The next morning brought no relief from the rain, but I returned to the shop anyway, armed with cleaning supplies and a determination to be rational. Whatever I'd seen or thought I'd seen in that mirror had a logical explanation. Antique mirrors often had imperfections that could create optical illusions. The storm, the stress of dealing with the inheritance, my grief over losing Baba Ann, any of these could have made me see things that weren't there. Mehmet, who owned the tea shop next door, was outside smoking when I arrived. "Elif Hanım," he called out, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "I heard Aisha's granddaughter was finally coming to the shop. Allah rahmet eylesin, she was a good woman." "Thank you, Mehmet Bey," I replied, fumbling with the keys again. "Did you know my grandmother well?" His smile faltered slightly. 40 years we were neighbors. She kept to herself mostly, but we talked sometimes. Strange hours she kept near the end, though. I'd see lights in the shop at 3, 4 in the morning. Really? She never mentioned having trouble sleeping. Mehmet took a long drag from his cigarette, looking uncomfortable. "There was one thing she said, maybe 2 weeks before she passed. She asked me to look after the shop if anything happened to her. Said someone needed to keep watching." "Watching what?" He shrugged, but his eyes darted to the shop window. "She didn't say. But Elif Hanım, if you need anything, help moving heavy items, you call me." "Yes." I thanked him and entered the shop, flipping on the battery-powered lanterns I'd brought. In the daylight, even filtered through rain-streaked windows, the place looked less ominous, just a cluttered antique shop that needed organizing. I worked methodically, creating an inventory on my laptop. Ottoman coffee sets, 47, Kilim rugs, 23, brass lamps, 31, mirrors, 67, not counting the large one in the corner, which I continued to avoid. Around noon, the bell above the door chimed. A woman entered, shaking rain from her umbrella. She was clearly a tourist, American, judging by her accent when she said, "Oh wow, this place is amazing." "Welcome," I said in English. "I'm afraid we're not officially open yet, but feel free to look around." "I'm Sarah," she said, already gravitating toward a display of evil eye pendants. "I'm studying Ottoman history at Bogazici University. This shop is like a museum." We chatted as she browsed, and I found myself enjoying the company. Sarah was knowledgeable and enthusiastic, asking about the provenance of various items. Eventually, inevitably, her attention turned to the corner. "That mirror is incredible," she breathed, approaching it before I could warn her. "It must be late Ottoman period, maybe 1920s? The craftsmanship is extraordinary." "I haven't had a chance to examine it properly yet," I said, fighting the urge to pull her away from it. Sarah leaned closer, studying the frame. "There's an inscription here. It's in Ottoman Turkish, something about eternal reflection, and wait, this is interesting. 'She who was lost shall be found in every surface.'" A chill ran down my spine. "You can read Ottoman Turkish? Part of my studies. This mirror has a story, I can feel it. The rose and nightingale motif usually represents doomed love in Ottoman poetry. And these marks here." She pointed to scratches on the lower frame I hadn't noticed before. They looked deliberate, like someone was trying to damage it but couldn't bring themselves to really destroy it. As she spoke, I watched her reflection in the mirror. For just a moment, so brief I almost missed it, there seemed to be a third figure standing behind us. A woman in white, her face obscured by long dark hair. "Did you see that?" I gasped. Sarah turned to me, confused. "See what?" I looked back at the mirror. Just our two reflections, nothing more. "Nothing. I thought I saw someone pass by the window." Sarah gave me a concerned look. "Are you okay? You look really pale." "Just tired. Listen, I should probably close up for lunch soon." "Of course. But hey, if you ever want to research the history of some of these pieces, I'd love to help. That mirror especially, I bet it has quite a story." After she left, I stood alone in the shop, staring at the mirror. My reflection stared back, but I had the unsettling feeling that it was watching me with someone else's eyes. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. "Anne, what do you know about Baba Anne's mirror? The big one in the corner?" There was a long pause. "What mirror, Kuchum?" "The rosewood one with mother of pearl. It's covered with a black cloth." "Elif, listen to me carefully. Cover it back up, and leave it alone." "Anne, what aren't you telling me? Just do as I say. Some things are better left undisturbed. Your grandmother knew what she was doing, but I've never been good at leaving things alone." That afternoon, I pulled the cloth off again, and began cleaning the mirror properly. As I worked, wiping away decades of dust from the frame, I noticed more inscriptions, names and dates, carved into the wood so faintly I could barely make them out. Zeynep Karaca, 1923, beloved daughter, may she find peace. My cloth stilled on the glass. 1923, someone's infant daughter, memorialized on a mirror frame. But why? As I pondered this, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop cleaning the mirror." I looked around the empty shop, heart pounding. The message had to be a coincidence. Maybe Sarah had given my number to someone. Or, another text, "She doesn't like to be disturbed." I grabbed my things and left, not bothering to cover the mirror again. As I locked the door, I could have sworn I heard something from inside the shop, a sound like silk rustling against glass. Chapter 3. The Research. I didn't return to the shop for 2 days. I told myself I was busy with my regular job. I did freelance graphic design from home. But the truth was that those text messages had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. I'd tried calling the number back, but it was disconnected. The rational part of my mind said it was probably just local kids playing pranks, having heard about the old antique shop reopening. But the timing, the specific mention of the mirror. On the third day, Sarah called. "Elif, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about that mirror. I did some research in the university archives, and I found something you need to see." We met at a cafe in Karaköy, the rain finally giving way to weak autumn sunshine. Sarah had a folder full of photocopied documents, newspaper clippings, official records, even what looked like pages from someone's diary. She spread the papers across the small table. I found her, or rather I found her family. The Karaca family were wealthy merchants in the 1920s, lived in one of those beautiful houses near the Galata Tower. She showed me a grainy newspaper photo of a stern-looking man with a spectacular mustache and a young woman in traditional dress standing beside him. "That's Osman Karaca and his daughter Zeynep. She was 17 in this photo, taken in 1922 for her engagement announcement." "Wait," I said, studying the photo. "The mirror said 1923, this can't be the same Zeynep." Sarah's expression darkened. "That's what I thought too. But look at this." She pulled out another clipping, this one from October 1923. The headline made my blood run cold. Tragedy strikes Karaca family. Young bride found dead. Zeynep was married in March 1923 to a much older merchant named Halit Bey. By all accounts it was an arranged marriage, and she gave birth to a daughter in September, also named Zeynep. But here's where it gets strange. Sarah showed me an official death record. Both mother and infant daughter had died on October 15, 1923. The official cause was listed as complications from childbirth, but that doesn't make sense. The baby was already a month old. And look at this, it's from a servant's diary that ended up in the estate sale documents. The diary entry was in Ottoman Turkish, but Sarah translated. The young mistress spends all her time staring into the mirror in her room. She speaks to it sometimes, asking it to show her another life. Master Halit has threatened to destroy it, but she won't let anyone near it. I fear for her mind. Another entry, dated October 14th. She says she can see through to another world in the mirror, where she made different choices. She says she's going to step through. Allah protect us. I think she means to harm herself. And the final entry, October 16th. They are both gone, found in front of the mirror, as if sleeping. But the mirror showed them standing up, walking around, even as their bodies lay still on the floor. Master Halit has ordered the mirror removed. I will not stay in this house another night. I sat back, coffee forgotten and growing cold. You think the mirror in my grandmother's shop is the same one? Look. Sarah pulled out one last photo, a picture of an ornate bedroom from the 1920s. In the corner, clearly visible, stood a rosewood mirror, with mother-of-pearl inlay. But that's impossible, I said, even as I recognized every detail of the frame. How would my grandmother have gotten it? Sarah shuffled through more papers. The Karaca estate was liquidated in 1924. Halit Bey left Istanbul, never remarried. The house was sold, the contents auctioned. I found a record of the sale. 1A. Demir purchased miscellaneous household items for a significant sum. A. Demir, Aisha Demir, my grandmother. I felt dizzy, but she would have been just a child in 1924. Maybe it was her parents. The point is, Elif, your family has had this mirror for almost a century, and if the servant's diary is to be believed, you can't seriously think Zeynep and her baby are trapped in a mirror, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I thought of the woman in white I'd glimpsed, the strange reflections, the text warning me away. Sarah leaned forward. I'm a historian. I deal in facts, but I also know that Istanbul is an old city with old stories, and not all of them fit neatly into academic papers. Your grandmother kept that mirror covered and hidden for a reason. That evening, I called my mother again. This time I didn't let her deflect. Anne, I know about Zeynep Karaca. I know about the mirror. What was Baba Anne hiding? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally she sighed. Your grandmother was 8 years old when her parents bought that mirror. She told me the story once, when I was pregnant with you. She said her mother had been unable to have children for years, had prayed at every tomb and shrine in Istanbul. Then they bought the mirror at the Karaca auction. And within a month her mother was pregnant. But Elif, she said her mother changed after that. Said she would spend hours staring into the mirror, talking to someone no one else could see. Said sometimes she would find her mother crying, saying she wants her baby back but I can't give her mine. My skin prickled. What happened to her mother? She died in childbirth with my grandmother's younger brother. The baby survived, but Aisha said the mirror showed her mother's reflection for years afterward, always pregnant, always crying. That's when they first covered it. Why didn't they just destroy it? They tried. Aisha's father took a hammer to it, but the hammer shattered. They tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. Finally they decided it was better to keep it contained. Watched. It became Aisha's responsibility when her parents died, and she never shirked it. She said as long as someone was watching, keeping it covered. Zeynep couldn't reach through. I thought of my grandmother, spending 50 years in that shop, guarding a mirror that might contain a desperate ghost. Anne, I've already uncovered it. Several times. My mother's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. Then cover it back up. Now, and whatever you do, don't look into it after dark. That's when she's strongest. But it was already past sunset, and I was already walking back to the shop, drawn by a mixture of fear and fascination I couldn't explain. The street was deserted except for a few cats huddled in doorways. Mehmet's tea shop was closed, metal shutters down. I unlocked the door with shaking hands, the battery lanterns casting weird shadows as they flickered to life. The mirror stood uncovered where I'd left it, and in the artificial light, it seemed to glow with its own luminescence. I approached slowly, my reflection growing larger with each step. At first everything looked normal, then like a double exposure in an old photograph, I saw her. Zeynep was beautiful, even in death. She wore a white nightgown, her long dark hair hanging loose around her shoulders. In her arms, she held a bundle. The baby, I realized. Both of them were pale as moonlight, their eyes dark hollows that seemed to look right through me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Zeynep's mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. She pressed one hand against the glass from her side, and I watched in horror as the surface began to ripple like water. The battery in one of my lanterns died, plunging half the shop into darkness. In the reduced light, Zeynep seemed more solid, more real. Her hand pushed harder against the glass, and I could see it beginning to bulge outward. That broke my paralysis. I grabbed the black cloth and threw it over the mirror, backing away until I hit the opposite wall. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. From under the cloth came a sound like fingernails on glass. I fled. Chapter 4. The haunting intensifies. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Zeynep's hollow gaze and reaching hand. Around 3 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed the shop's landline, a phone that hadn't been connected in months. I didn't answer. It rang again at 3:15, 3:30, 3:45. Each time, I let it go to voicemail, but there were never any messages. At dawn, I called Sarah. I saw her, I said without preamble, in the mirror. She tried to come through. To her credit, Sarah didn't question my sanity. I'm coming over. Don't go back to the shop alone. While I waited for her, I did something I hadn't done since childhood. I prayed. Not formal prayers, just desperate pleas to whoever might be listening to help me understand what Zeynep wanted and how to give her peace. Sarah arrived with coffee and a determined expression. Okay, let's think about this logically. Ghost stories usually have rules. What do we know? I told her everything. My mother's story. What I'd seen. The phone calls. So she's strongest at night, she's connected to the mirror, and she wants something. The servant's diary mentioned she wanted to step through to another life. Maybe she's trapped between worlds. But why now? I asked. The mirror's been covered for decades. Why is she suddenly so active? Sarah frowned. What if it's not sudden? What if your grandmother had been keeping her contained all these years, and now that she's gone? We both fell silent, contemplating the idea that my 89-year-old grandmother had been in a decades-long supernatural standoff. We need to go back, Sarah said finally, in daylight, together. Maybe we can find some clue about what she wants. The shop looked innocent in the morning sun, customers walking past without a second glance. Mehmet waved from his tea shop, but didn't approach. Something in my expression must have warned him off. Inside, the black cloth still covered the mirror, undisturbed. But something was different. It took me a moment to realize what. The other mirrors in the shop, all 67 of them, had been turned to face the covered mirror in the corner. I didn't do that, I whispered. Sarah pulled out her phone, taking pictures. This is intentional. She's using the other mirrors to amplify her presence, maybe. As if in response, one of the small hand mirrors on a nearby shelf fell to the floor. It didn't break, but when I picked it up, I nearly dropped it again. Instead of my face, it showed Zeynep's reflection. Sarah, I said, my voice barely audible. She looked over my shoulder and gasped. In the small mirror, Zeynep was gesturing urgently, pointing at something we couldn't see. Her mouth moved rapidly, desperately trying to communicate. She's trying to tell us something, Sarah breathed. Look, she keeps pointing to her left. I turned the mirror, trying to see what Zeynep was indicating. Her reflection shifted, showing not the shop, but what looked like the ornate bedroom from the 1920s photograph. She pointed insistently at something on a dresser, a leather journal, a diary, Sarah guessed. Is she showing us her diary? Zeynep nodded vigorously in the mirror, then pointed at us, then at the journal again. But how are we supposed to find a diary from 1923? I asked. The image in the mirror changed. Now it showed our shop, but from Zeynep's perspective inside the mirror world. She walked, glided really, to a specific spot near the covered mirror, and pointed down. Under the floorboards, Sarah was already on her knees, examining the wooden floor. Here, these boards are newer than the others. We used a crowbar from the shop's tools to pry up the boards. Underneath, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather journal and a small wooden box. The journal was Zeynep's, written in Ottoman Turkish. Sarah translated as we read. March 3, 1923. I am to be married tomorrow to a man I have never met. Father says it is a good match, that Halit Bey is wealthy and respected. Mother gave me this journal as a wedding gift. She says writing will ease my heart. I pray she is right. March 20, 1923. Halit Bey is not unkind, but he is cold. He wants sons, heirs for his business. I am lonely in this great house. My only comfort is the beautiful mirror he bought me as a wedding gift. Sometimes I stare into it and imagine I see the life I might have had. May 15, 1923. I am with child. Halit is pleased. I should be happy, but I feel as if I am disappearing, becoming nothing more than a vessel for his legacy. September 8, 1923. My daughter was born today. I named her Zeynep, after myself, so that some part of who I was might survive. Halit wanted a son, and will not even look at her. I love her more than life itself. The entries became more disturbing as they progressed. October 4, 1923. The mirror shows me things now. Another life where I chose differently, where I married for love and raised my daughter in joy, not sorrow. I know it cannot be real, but it is more vivid than my waking life. October 10, 1923. She spoke to me from the mirror today. The other Zeynep, the one who made different choices. She says there is a way to trade places, to step through the glass. She says she is lonely too, that her husband died and left her alone with her child. We could switch, she says. No one would know. October 14, 1923. I have decided. Tonight, when the moon is dark, I will take my daughter and step through. The other Zeynep has agreed. She will take my place here, live the life of a wealthy widow. I will take hers, poorer but free. It is not death but transformation. The final entry was different, written in a shaking hand. October 15, 1923. It was a lie. There is no other side, no other life, only darkness and cold and endless reflection. She tricked me, the thing in the mirror that wore my face. Now my baby and I are trapped, neither living nor dead, while it walks the world in my skin. If anyone finds this, know that the mirror is a trap. The thing that looks back is not your reflection. It is hungry, and it lies. Sarah and I sat in stunned silence. The small wooden box contained 2 items, a baby's silver rattle and a locket with photographs of Zeynep and her daughter. So she's not trying to come through to hurt anyone, I said slowly. She's warning us. But then what happened to the thing that took her place? Sarah was already flipping through the historical records on her phone. Oh my God. Elif, look at this. October 16, 1923. Zeynep Karaca found dead of apparent suicide. Infant daughter also deceased. But then there's this notice from November. Woman claiming to be Zeynep Karaca committed to Bakırköy Mental Hospital. Patient insists she is not who she appears to be. The real Zeynep's body was never found, I realized, because she was trapped in the mirror. The thing that took her place couldn't maintain the deception. A loud crack made us both jump. The black cloth covering the mirror had fallen to the floor. In the glass, Zeynep stood clearly visible, no longer the terrifying specter of the night before but a sad young woman holding her baby. She nodded at us, then pointed urgently at the other mirrors in the shop. They were all showing the same image now. Not Zeynep, but something else. A dark, shapeless thing that seemed to be pressing against the glass from the inside, seeking a way out. It's still here, Sarah whispered. The thing that tricked her. It's been in the mirrors all along. The temperature in the shop plummeted. Frost began forming on the mirror surfaces, and our breath came out in visible puffs. The dark thing in the mirrors grew more solid, more defined. It looked like Zeynep, but wrong, the features slightly off, the smile too wide, the eyes reflecting no light. Cover them, I shouted. Cover all the mirrors. We ran through the shop, throwing cloths, newspapers, anything we could find over every reflective surface. But there were too many, and the thing was getting stronger. I could hear whispers now, promises of different lives, better choices, freedom from pain. In the large mirror, Zeynep was gesturing frantically. She held up her baby with one arm and with the other, she mimed breaking something. She wants us to break the mirrors, Sarah said. But your mother said they tried. Not all of them, I interrupted. Just the small ones. If we trap it, contain its reflections. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox and smashed the nearest hand mirror. The thing in the reflection screamed, a sound like glass scraping against stone. Black smoke poured from the broken mirror before dissipating. It's working. We went through the shop like whirlwinds, breaking every small mirror we could find. With each one destroyed, the thing's presence weakened. The whispers grew quieter, the cold less intense. Finally, only the large mirror remained. In it, Zeynep stood guard, her face determined. The dark thing cowered behind her, no longer able to maintain its false appearance. It looked like shadow given form, writhing and shapeless. I raised the hammer, but Zeynep held up her hand. She pointed to the journal, then to herself, then made a gesture I didn't understand. Wait, Sarah said. I think she wants us to read something to her. Last rites? A prayer? I thought of the inscription on the mirror frame. She who was lost shall be found in every surface. Then I understood. She's not lost anymore, I said to Zeynep's reflection. We found you. We know your story. We know the truth. Zeynep smiled, the first time I'd seen her do so. She turned to face the shadow thing behind her, and spoke. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see their effect. The shadow began to dissolve, pulled apart like smoke in wind. You have no power here, I continued, understanding flooding through me. Zeynep Karaca was not your victim. She was a mother protecting her child, a woman who chose her own fate.
Chapter 5. The Resolution. The shadow thing let out one final piercing shriek before it dissolved completely, leaving only Zeynep and her baby in the mirror. She turned back to us, and for the first time I could see peace in her eyes. Thank you, she mouthed, though no sound came through the glass. Then, something extraordinary happened. The mirror's surface began to glow with a soft, warm light. Zeynep walked forward, not pressing against the glass this time, but moving through it like it was merely a doorway. She stepped into the shop, translucent but visible, her baby cradled in her arms. Sarah grabbed my hand, and we stood frozen as Zeynep approached. Up close she looked exactly as she had in the photographs, young, beautiful, but with eyes that held nearly a century of sorrow. She reached out and touched my face with one ghostly hand. It felt like cool silk against my skin. Then she spoke, her voice like wind chimes. Your grandmother kept her promise. She watched over us, kept the Dark One contained. Now you have freed us. The mirror prison is broken. Where will you go? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Zeynep smiled. Where we were always meant to go. My daughter and I can finally rest. She began to fade, becoming more translucent with each passing second. But before she disappeared completely, she pressed something into my hand, the locket from the wooden box, though I hadn't seen her pick it up. For your daughter, she whispered. When the time comes, May she make her own choices, live her own life, and then she was gone. The shop felt different immediately, lighter, cleaner, as if a heavy fog had lifted. The large mirror now showed only our reflections, normal and unremarkable. It was just a mirror, beautiful but ordinary. Sarah and I stood in silence for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Did we really just, she began, help a ghost find peace and banish a mirror demon? I finished. Yeah, I think we did. We laughed, slightly hysterical, and hugged each other tightly. Epilogue. 6 months later. I kept the antique shop, though I made some changes. The large mirror now hangs in the front window, where it catches the morning light beautifully. I've sold most of the other mirrors, keeping only a few of the most historic pieces. The shop has become something of a destination for history buffs and paranormal enthusiasts alike, especially after Sarah published an academic paper on the Zeynep Karaca case, Ottoman women's history through a paranormal lens. Mehmet still brings me tea every afternoon, though he no longer asks about the strange lights or sounds. He seems relieved that whatever my grandmother had been guarding is finally at peace. My mother visited last month, finally ready to face the place that had consumed so much of her mother's life. She stood before the mirror for a long time, then said, "She's really gone, isn't she? The presents Mama always worried about. They're both gone," I assured her. Zeynep and the thing that trapped her. The mirror is just a mirror now. But that's not entirely true. Sometimes on quiet mornings when the light is just right, I see something in the mirror's reflection. Not Zeynep or the shadow creature, but glimpses of the past. The shop as it was in my grandmother's time. The Karaca house in its glory days. Moments of history preserved in glass and silver. And sometimes, very rarely, I see a young woman in modern clothes standing where I stand, running her own antique shop. She looks like me but different. Confident, unmarried by choice, living the life she chose for herself. I like to think it's a glimpse of one of those other possibilities Zeynep once saw. A reminder that we always have choices, that we can always choose our own reflections. I still have the locket. I'm not married, have no daughter yet. But someday perhaps I will. And when I do, I'll tell her this story. I'll tell her about Zeynep Karaca, who was trapped by others' expectations and her own desperate choices. I'll tell her about my grandmother, who spent 50 years standing guard against the darkness. And I'll tell her that mirrors show us not just who we are, but who we might become. The shop thrives now. People come from all over to see the mirror of Zeynep Karaca. Though most don't know its true history, they see only a beautiful antique, a piece of Ottoman craftsmanship. They don't know that it once held a soul, that it was a prison and a gateway and a trap all at once. But I know, Sarah knows, and now you know too. Sometimes, late at night when I'm doing the books, I feel a presence in the shop, not threatening or cold, but warm and grateful. I like to think it's Zeynep, checking in, making sure her story is remembered. Or perhaps it's my grandmother, still keeping watch in her own way. I've learned to live with the mysteries, the things that don't quite fit into the rational world. Istanbul is an old city, layered with history and memory. Not all of its stories can be explained, and not all of them should be. But this one needed to be told. Zeynep Karaca deserved to have her truth known, her choices understood. She wasn't a vengeful ghost or a cautionary tale. She was a young woman who wanted freedom, who was tricked by something that fed on desperation and loneliness. The mirror still stands in my shop at 14 Serdari Ekrem Street. Visitors welcome, but I keep the black cloth handy, just in case. Some habits, learned from grandmothers who knew more than they told, are worth keeping, and I never ever look into mirrors after dark.